right, I think we're close to being ready to kick this webinar off. For any new joiners, there is a poll that you can take if you would like on your machine learning knowledge. Before we start, just a quick mention that any questions that may arise are very welcome, but please add them to the Q&A session or in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. If we don't have time to go through everything, we'll be reaching out to you and provide you with an answer. Other than that, I think I'll hand over to Jon and Nilesh, who will take you through today's session.
Excellent. Thank you, Cecilia. Yeah, so welcome to the LogPoint UEBA webinar, where me and Nilesh will take you through machine learning, cybersecurity, and how we apply machine learning here in LogPoint, and in particular on our user and entity behavior analytics solution, which is, as you might know, what UEBA stands for. As Cecilia also mentioned, don't hesitate to shoot the questions in the Q&A, and we'll take them in the end. We'll make sure to leave some time for that. All right, quick introduction of the speakers today. I'm Jon. I'm an engineering manager in the UEBA team, located in LogPoint's Copenhagen office.
Hello everyone, myself Nilesh. I am sales engineer based out of UK and Ireland, looking after LogPoint business for UK, Ireland and wider EMEA team. I have spent about 20 years in cybersecurity, so any questions you have around UEBA or SIEM in general, just ask away.
Excellent. So, do we have the results from this poll?
You sure do. We have a lot of people with a conceptual understanding of machine learning and a few who have a deep understanding but have not used it in practice.
Sounds good. Then I will not completely skip this slide here and start off by illustrating or trying to explain what machine learning is with this illustration. There I can see the results of the poll. Cool. So imagine you have this problem. You have to write a program to identify or distinguish between apples and bananas. In the traditional way, we might call it, you would start by you would write your program and you would use your kind of knowledge about apples and bananas to start writing the code. And a very simple MVP here is if the fruit is yellow, then it's a banana, and if it's not, then it's probably an apple. And this is what your code would do every time. But then you start to figure out, oh wait, there's actually yellow apples, and then you would add a case there in your code. And so if it's it can also be a yellow, but if it's round, maybe then it's an apple, and and this is what we would call the traditional way of approaching this problem. There's another one which probably for this particular problem and many other types of problems is a better approach, and that's a machine learning approach where you actually gather a bunch of data on apples and bananas, and in this case, you have pictures of apples, of different apples, of small and big apples, yellow apples. Then you have bananas, and they are turned horizontally or vertically, and they are big and small and whatnot. So given you have this data set, you can feed this into what's usually just referred to as a model in your machine learning algorithm, which before getting this data has no idea about apples or bananas. It's only gonna be trained with this data to distinguish between apples and bananas. This is not as explicit as the rules, but you can avoid having to manually and yourself having to write all the edge cases and all the there's some kind of weird apples, you should just have that in your data set instead of having some kind of a long, weird, hard-coded rule around that. So just to summarize, traditional, you have rules and programs, no real data. Machine learning way, you take a data set and a generic model, and you train this model with your data set, and it will detect or classify apples and bananas. Good. There might be some questions on this. We'll take them later. So, and it's not the. I mean, this is also related to what's coming, because we in LogPoint we would argue that you actually need to do both the explicit rule-based detection and the machine learning detection if you want, you know, your cybersecurity fitness to be good. Quick status on the cyber landscape or cyber happenings. So it's probably very wrong to say, but today is a very, very exciting day to be in cybersecurity or time. So there's a lot going on. I'm on the good side, no worries, but it is definitely challenging and an exciting sector to be in. So just during the pandemic, cybercrime has increased by 600%. And what we're seeing out there is threat actors are running their schemes like full tech companies. They have organizational structures, job interviews, growth plans for their employees, et cetera, and they even, an emerging pattern now is this thing called ransomware as a service. And you have probably, if you are following the sector, seen a lot of ransomware attacks recently. They have also grown dramatically. And just to summarize that, every 10 seconds, there's a new victim of a ransomware attack. So I'm here, and me and Niles are here to talk about UEBA. I'll also briefly discuss SIEM, but this here illustration is just to, it's kind of the LogPoint offering portfolio. Of course, we don't offer security, hygiene, and basics. We require that if you're going to use our tools. I mean, it's always the start, right? You just need to have your basics under control: password management, authentication, authorization, threat modeling, keeping your stuff up to date. I just updated my devices today because on Monday there was a vulnerability released or disclosed where attackers could take basically control of your Apple devices with relative ease. So recommend to update. Now onto the SIEM and the UEBA. I'll not cover SOAR in this webinar. It's that will be done separately. It's our latest offering in LogPoint. Very exciting stuff. But so back to it. SIEM, which stands for Security Information and Event Management. This is really our core offering, and I'll also get back to that later. It's where we aggregate all the data, and in comparing it to UEBA, it's a explicit programming method, right? So it's rule-based. It considers what is allowed and what's not allowed. Whereas the UEBA, so User and Entity Behavior Analytics, considers what's normal and abnormal, rather than having specific rules saying, you know, this threshold is crossed here, or these and these logs are detected. It learns from the data what's normal and then alerts if abnormal things are happening. Just briefly, SOAR stands for Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response, and is the response part. So the SIEM and UEBA, they help you detect threats, and the SOAR helps you respond to threats. Yeah, and here you can see the connection back to the machine learning slide. So in the SIEM, this is where we keep our rules, and I also elaborate a bit on that. And the UEBA offering is more data-driven or machine learning focused. But the SIEM is the foundation for the UEBA. It's why I'm gonna spend a little bit of time talking about SIEM and specifically why it's important to the UEBA. So there are two main reasons. There's the rule-based detection, which you cannot avoid, really. There's just so many use cases out there, which I at least have very hard time imagining how machine learning would solve. So we do need these capabilities of rule-based detection. And then the SIEM is the data foundation for the UEBA and any detection and response you do. So this is really, the SIEM is the data aggregator, normalizer, etc. And this building machine learning applications on top of solid data foundations, that's where you get good performance instead of having to worry about that step in the pipeline. A quick example on a SIEM use case. So there's this R-Evil. They have actually vanished from the planet, or let's say cyberspace. But they are a financially motivated group. They operate a ransomware as a service scheme, and they would infect victims with supply chain attacks. It means they had infected a software distribution tool called Kaseya, where this Kaseya distribution software will then distribute infections on Kaseya users and customers. Now, when attacks like this happen, of course, security analysts scramble. They start to analyze the attacks. They start to see the patterns, see the methods, the tactics. And here's an example. So in the R-Evil example, they would delete all shadow copies or backups, basically. So, I mean, you infect the system, and in a ransomware attack, you would encrypt the data, you delete the backup so the victims cannot recover, and then you extort money out of the victims. And this here in the bottom, these two lines here, this is a log entry that you would see when shadow copies are deleted. So during at least R-Evil's period, if you would see this log in your, I don't know exactly from which kind of system, which system it comes from, but if you would see this log in LogPoint, for example, you should probably have a closer look and see if there's something fishy going on. If somebody's deleting your backups, could be an attack, an indicator of an attack. Now, this is what a SIEM excels at. So gathering all the data, looking in the, it's a needle in a haystack problem, which SIEM is optimized for. It sees this, raise some alarms, and then the analysts can respond. I have a hard time seeing how a machine learning system could tackle this challenge, for example. There's other challenges where machine learning systems would excel at, where it would be very hard to solve with the SIEM. So that was the rule-based part. The other part I mentioned that is great about SIEM, especially seen from a UEBA developer, is it covers the first and typically the most time-consuming phases when creating a machine learning application. So the SIEM handles all the ingest, so it gathers data from all the different devices and applications in one place, normalizes them, stores them in a good way, and it does a lot of other things. But seen from a machine learning application flow, this is where we take over in the UEBA. So we get the nice clean data, we build our models, and we use this data to train and fit them. And then we get new observations and we classify and detect. And of course, there's feedback loops. We have to retrain, calibrate, understand new data sources, etc., etc. But this is a simplified model. So just to illustrate that the UEBA builds on top of SIEM and would not be here without SIEM. Good. I think it's time to get to the UEBA. I'll spend a couple more minutes and then I'll hand over to Nilesh to actually show you this thing live. But just quickly on the motivations, like why are we doing this and what are we trying to accomplish by building a UEBA solution? One thing is the insider threat scenario and the fact that this is a growing tactic or a growing, let's say, threat. This is where UEBA excels at. So it's, I mean, the first letter in this acronym is users. So it's really optimized to build baselines and detect abnormal behaviors in users. It can both be human users, but also technical users like service accounts and stuff like this. We're also quite proud of and focus on alert fatigue problem. Well, we're not proud of that problem. We're proud of tackling that problem and how we do it. So we have a risk modeling algorithm as well that prioritizes which alerts the security analyst should focus on. Because alert fatigue is a real problem in this industry. There's just simply so many false positives. Yeah, and we hope by doing this, you know, we reduce the time it takes to resolve incidents and thereby saving money or effort, definitely, for users of these systems. And here another illustration just before I hand over to Nilesh about the kind of anomaly detection and what it is, what the UEBA is doing. So here's an example. There's two entities. If you look on the left, there's some kind of baseline, some observations, some data points, and we have the baseline over time. And this is where, you know, a machine learning application would, well, one use case which is why it's better to use a data-driven or machine learning approach, because one, the baseline drifts, right? So the behavior can change over time, and doing this in a rule-based way for human to update it and, you know, manually go in and calibrate is just crazy time-consuming. The other example to highlight is that there's many entities. So we have customers that have thousands and tens of thousands of entities, and there's no security analyst that's going to go in and build a baseline for each of them and keep it up to date, etc. So this we do automatically in the UEBA. And then it's also illustrating like what's an anomaly, because, you know, something that entity Y here in the bottom, or vice versa, something at the data point close to their baseline might be a complete anomaly for another entity. So let's take an example of uploaded data. If entity X and Y are two different users on the network, and these are the baselines for how much data they upload, then, you know, if entity Y all of a sudden uploads significantly more data than it does typically, this would raise an alarm. Probably would not raise an alarm if you're uploading less data. Maybe not, depends on your use case. But it would definitely be considered a security anomaly if this would happen. Okay, I think it's time for a live demo.
And you are able to see my screen? Great. Yep. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my video because I've got multiple screens, and if I'm looking away, it's just a bit distracting. I'm going to stop my video and talk to you about UEBA and how it can help your businesses. And as Jon was saying, UEBA is about how someone has been behaving, someone or some entity has been behaving over the number of days, weeks, months, and we define normal. Until you know what normal looks like, you can't tell what is abnormal. So we use our machine learning to define normal, define that baseline. Looking at the screen right now on our UEBA dashboard, I can see these analytics were made from July to September. We taken into account 114 million events, found 2,500 anomalies and one really risky activity. If you scroll down, how much information does it say? If you look at the top chart where it says low risk or extreme risk, it's gradually creeping up from July to September. That's not many months, 2 months period. And it's gradually creeping up. And it just say that here as well, overall risk is high and increasing slowly. So the risk in your network is increasing. And what is the biggest risk? It's internal recon. That's your biggest risk right now in the network, contributing to up to 24% of the overall risk. But what does this all mean in terms of users and entities? If you go up to Explore here or click on one of these users, it will bring you to the same screen. Here, we talk about the actual users or entities and the kind of risk score they have. If you look back here, our overall risk goes up to 100. We do not keep really high scores. So closer to the 100, more extreme the risk, closer to the 0, lower the risk. You go back to Explore, you're looking at these are the users or entities, and that's the risk score. You can, and this is extremely intuitive, rather than having to know what to do with this, you can simply say, I'm only interested in all potentially compromised accounts. Click on that, gets added to the filter list here. And now across all the users, you're looking at potential compromised account. You may choose, okay, I'm not interested in a particular event, but I'm interested in user. So you click on user. Now you're seeing all the potential threat activity from one single user. And what could be these kind of activities? If you were to quickly check, if I scroll down here, have a look at this. Henry Dave is a shift worker who works 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And suddenly he logs in at 7 a.m. Now it could be completely genuine. As Jon was saying, behavior may change, but this is sudden and you need to be aware of it. With a single click, you could also find these raw events, the actual raw files. If I click on it, these are the actual raw files that caused this issue. There are 199 logs. He logged in between this hour and this hour. And that's how quick it is. Knowing where you were, just clicking on Explore Raw Events brings you to that issue. If I look at a different issue from Henry, Henry usually uploads 820 KB file to Dropbox or any kind of online storage using post method. His highest has been 30 meg or 29.07 meg. His colleagues have been peaking out at 10.27 meg. Suddenly we saw Henry upload 1.31 gig. Now that is an alert. Immediately when you, and we'll also tell you what we think it could be. If you look at it, when somebody is uploading suddenly a large amount of data, it could be data theft. And again, just clicking on Exploring Raw Events, we go in there. Here are the files that caused it. You can also see we have increased his risk score. So we are seeing what are our models. User sent an unusual amount of data using post method. During which time period, on which date. It's not just saying, okay, this has happened. You can by clicking on this, you see the raw log files. Now, Jon was explaining, SIEM is the base for UEBA. SIEM will do the correlation, SIEM will store the data, SIEM will synthesize the data, and UEBA will use this synthesized data to run its machine learning models against. I were to go back here, what else can I do with this detail? I can choose this to have on 24 hours, 7 days, 30 days, or all data. So you can run it against all data. Absolutely every single thing you have. You can choose to add it to a report, and you can create an UEBA report and email it to yourself. You can choose to then go down and say, okay, who are the low risk scores and why are they here? It may be that they are not at all risky, but we need to know what is happening with those users. What has happened? That Bruce has failed his access attempt to a shared drive. Previously, he only failed once, but now we have seen him having more failed attempts. Now, if you think back to the SIEM world, how many rules will you have to write per user to pick up the 3 activities that I showed you? One was unusual logging hour out of the shift pattern. The other one was uploading excessive amount of data to Dropbox. And the third is this one, failed logging attempts, unusually high compared to previous attempts. How many rules you would have to write per user to get this kind of result in a standard SIEM? This is where the UEBA or the machine learning comes in. Machine learning is able to pick up this data, run it against its model, and find those anomalies. It defines the normal and then starts hunting for the abnormal. This, I will hand back to Jon. If you have any questions, I can see a couple of questions pop into my chat window. We will answer it after we finish. But handing back to Jon now.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot again, Nilesh, for the live demo. I'm gonna just quickly touch upon the MITRE ATT&CK framework because it was put on the agenda and might be relevant for someone, and how this ties into UEBA and SIEM. So first of all, what is the MITRE ATT&CK framework? So at least for me, it's an industry standard. So as in the cybersecurity industry, for classifying threats and tactics, threats, techniques, and tactics. So it's a standard way of classifying things and talking about things. So, well, we are in the cybersecurity industry, and we within the cybersecurity industry are talking about the same things, and we call the same things the same names. Not only in discussions, but it becomes very important when you are having system-to-system discussions or integrations. So the MITRE ATT&CK, we're rolling this out across our product portfolio in LogPoint, and also to to understand if there's an alert in UEBA, what kind of a threat or a tactic could this be, because you might want to do something on the SIEM side or the SOAR side based on that classification. And then not only internally in LogPoint, we'll have other external integrations, for example, to threat intelligence feeds or any other software or service where if we all talk the same language, we follow the industry standard, things are just easier. It's already widely adopted, and as I say, LogPoint is, we've rolled it out to a number of our products, and we are gradually rolling it out to all of them. And just, this is probably way too small for you to see, but this is the framework itself. So it's each column represents a category of tactics, and they are kind of logically ordered in the way where usually an attack, these are the different phases in an attack. The colors indicate what we cover with SIEM and UEBA. I don't think it's updated for SOAR yet, but as you can see out of the kind of, what the industry views as the whole framework, we were quite well covered, and we're increasing this coverage as we go, of course. Yeah, as I said, we do have MITRE ATT&CK classification in our SIEM. we are rolling it out for our UEBA and SOAR as we speak. Should only be a few weeks in the future. All right, that was it from us. And now some time.
I have,
first of all, you, and then then to the questions. Yeah.
Sure. We have some of our SIEM existing SIEM customers on the call, and I've had some direct questions being sent to me.
Okay.
Happy for me to answer, or would you like to take them?
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
First question was the difference between the SIEM correlation and UEBA. And I think that was answered earlier as well. When you're looking, let's take an example. If your door entry system says that Jon never entered the building, right? And then Jon's desktop log or Windows AD log says that he logged in without any VPN to his desktop, no errors. If you compare the two on their own, they're not an error. Door entry system doesn't have any entry for you're not logging it, so not walking into the building. That's fine. He logged in first time, no errors. That's fine. But unless you correlate the two, you put the two together on the same day, same hour, then it's a problem. That's your correlation that's happening within the SIEM. That looks based on the rules, starts doing correlation. Mm-hmm. The UEBA starts working on machine learning and models, how something or someone is behaving. Your printer always receives more traffic, sends less traffic. But suddenly its output has gone way above its input. Now that's anomalous behavior. We've been monitoring this printer for a month and suddenly this happens. That is out of ordinary. So that was, hope that answers your question on what is correlation within the SIEM and what is UEBA. The other one that I received was what data sources are supported for UEBA. We have a huge list, and apologies for looking away from the screen. I'm just making sure that I can look at it. We've got from Active Directory, Office 365, Cisco, we've got web proxies, email logs, VPN logs, and also file access logs. There's a huge list available on docs.logpoint.com. If you go there and search for UEBA, you'll find all the supported UEBA sources. And why, and this would be one of the questions, is why only certain sources are supported for UEBA? It's because in order for us to run our models against the logs that are coming in, they need to have certain fields. If the manufacturer is not coding those certain fields into the log, the models won't run against them. That's why there are a certain number of sources added, but these are increasing. We are adding new sources every month. So go to docs.logpoint.com and you will see these. Oh, it is in our chat window. There's the link to docs.logpoint.com. Thank you for sharing that. And one last, which is quite a surprising one. Can UEBA invoke SOAR? Definitely. If you see that printer example, or you see your CCTV server suddenly connected to North Korea, it never does, and suddenly you see that, and you want to move it to a quarantine VLAN, SOAR can do it, and we can invoke SOAR. We can go ahead and pass this information to SOAR and ask it to move this IP address or a particular server into quarantine VLAN and alert you so you can go ahead and fix it. So I think these were the three questions, and I've answered that. If you think I have not, or if you have further questions, please put them in chat window and I'll answer them.
Very good.
Thank you, Nilesh. I also got a couple of questions, so I hope you're ready for it. One is that first statement, UEBA is a cloud service. So what kind of risk does that present in terms of data leaks?
Mm-hmm. Shall I take this one? Yeah, so we have a thick tinfoil hat on being in the cybersecurity industry. So we take this very seriously, and everything all the data that's being shipped from our customers' premise to the cloud is encrypted on premise. So there's no identifiable information in basically being shipped to the cloud. So what our models see as an email or a user string or whatever is just random gibberish that could never be, say that the cloud service is compromised, could never be used. You will have to have the decryption key, which is stored on premise at customers.
Perfect. Thank you for that. If someone has follow-up questions, just shoot. A second question is two-part question that I've received is how often are the machine learning models updated and how do we tune them?
Yeah, this is a longer one. So the classical answer is it depends. So it depends on the detector and the model. If it's a model that needs to stay up to date and stay up to date up to a day, then we calibrate it daily, and others we calibrate over longer periods. So that's what happens automatically. Then obviously we have data scientists in the team trying out new methods, trying out new models. Not all reach production. Some are scrapped from the desks before they reach production. But yeah, I guess that would be my answer to that. Hope it said something.
Yeah, makes sense. From the attendees, anyone wants to ask a direct question, you can send us a message or put it in the Q&A session, and we will happily answer it. If not, you're more than welcome to contact us directly after it, because if it pertains to your network, feel free. And there's a link in our chat session about our community. So we have a LogPoint community online where you can join in and start asking questions. And there is a tech help available to help out with any questions you may have. Well, as there are no more questions coming in, this is what happens when you have techies on call. Everything is finished before time.
Yeah.
I'd like to take this time to thank everyone for joining in. Oh, there is Ryan. Ryan, you're welcome, and thank you for joining in. I really appreciate your time. And everybody else, thanks for the questions. They were really insightful questions. Thank you for joining. And if you need us for anything, just feel free to contact us.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.